Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
The Steelers put their stamp on the AFC North with a monster win over the Ravens on Sunday. Also, the Bills made sure the 72 Dolphins could pop their champagne. And for all the hype this year, Tennessee still pays Georgia rent. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
The Steelers and the Ravens got together on Sunday, and you knew it was going to end in a weird-looking number at the end of the day, because that's just how this rivalry goes. 18-16 was the final. I say that qualifies as a weird-looking number. And the Pittsburgh Steelers got a win. They're now 8-2 and in the driver's seat in the AFC North. Chris Carter from Locked On Steelers was in the building for this one. And Chris, this is every Pittsburgh Steelers game in a lot of ways. And for them to hold this version of the Baltimore Ravens to 16 points, this defense is a little banged up. That has to be the story in this one, right?
It's the defensive dominance. And also, I think what speaks very loudly about this is that this was a game plan win, because TJ Watt was great in this game, but he only had one sack. Patrick Queen came and stepped up, but he had one strip turnover. I think Fitzpatrick, made some plays, but he didn't get any interceptions. There was no one player that just destroyed the Ravens in this game. It was a team effort. It was Patrick Queen forcing a fumble before halftime and also making 10 tackles. It was Cam Hayward plugging up the middle, TJ Watt pressuring a lot, Nick Herbig pressuring a lot, Nick Herbig punching a ball out, Peyton Wilson, rookie linebacker, intercepting Lamar Jackson in one of the most spectacular interceptions you're going to see all season, doing that play after play after play. And then even when the Ravens got that touchdown at the end, they had to get that 2-point conversion. The Steelers, and I thought this was very interesting, and we talk about this on Locked On Steelers in more in depth, but they intentionally called a timeout right as the Baltimore Ravens were snapping the ball, because they wanted to see, are they going to try the Tebow pop pass? Sure enough, that's what the Ravens are going for. Like, okay, now they won't try that. Now we know what they're going to try. And Joey Porter Jr., Patrick Queen said, after the game, he said, right after we called that timeout, Joey Porter Jr., he said, Joey never talks, but all of a sudden he was like, they're not scoring. And sure enough, on the 2-point conversion play, Lamar rolls to his left. Joey Porter crashes immediately, pressures him, and forces him to just kind of lob one up and get knocked around, and the Steelers get the stop. Just a big win for this Steelers defense across the board. Really solid, disciplined football on their part. And going into this weekend, I know the Lions are probably going to be the number one, offense after what they did at Jaguars. But going into this weekend, the Ravens had the number one total yardage offense, number one scoring offense, number one in first downs, number one in rushing, and they just held that team to 16 points. And without a single touchdown from Russell Wilson in the offense, they get 6 field goals. Chris Boswell's 4th career 6 field goal game. Crazy win.
Yeah, and it seems like we talked a couple weeks ago, Chris, about this Steelers team, what their ceiling was, what their status was as an AFC contender. To what degree do you think a game like this is proof of concept for a potential deep playoff run, where you just go, hey, if we can win a game like this, why can't we win any game in the AFC?
I mean, I think you look at the Ravens and how the Ravens played the Bills. I mean, they smacked the Bills, and the Bills just beat the Chiefs. They played the Chiefs real tough. The Steelers play the kind of football that I think the best teams in the NFL are playing right now. Really tough defense, opportunistic offense, and they can run the ball a decent bit. Now, will the Steelers work it out in the playoffs? Will they take down the Chiefs? We'll see when we get there. But Peter, this was back-to-back games. They played teams with 7 wins. The Commanders last week, the Ravens this week. And they won both times, and both by small margins, but small margins win, and small margins are still wins. And, one thing I point to is, like, you want to tell how greatly coached the team is. In the last 9 straight games the Steelers and the Ravens have met, they have all come down to a single possession. And in those 9 games, the Steelers are 8-1. That comes from focus, that comes from team commitment, and that's something the Steelers have in spades. And I think last week you saw Russell Wilson throw 3 touchdowns. This week you saw them have to kick 6 field goals. The Steelers can win multiple ways, and that's not something they've been able to say in a long time.
Yeah, I was going to say they beat the Commanders in what was a semi shootout, right? A very different game than this one. And then you play this grinded out game, the kind of game we know Pittsburgh can win, but to do it against this team, to make it a grinded out game against an offense that was on a historic pace so far this season, I think speaks to them. Last thing here, Chris, quickly, Mike Tomlin, he seems to be feeling himself in a way this year that I know he's always been a guy who has that confidence and that swagger, but he seems to really like this football team, pulling all the right strings. Had a little something to say about Deontay Johnson, has had a little pep in his step about making the call on Russell Wilson when a lot of people question that. To what degree do you think something like that with Mike Tomlin, who is the culture coach of culture coaches, trickles down to this team?
I think it breeds confidence into the locker room. You know, Patrick Queen was so motivated going into this week and beyond just the Ravens. But then, you know, after the game, you know, Mike Tomlin's asked about Patrick Queen. He's like, hey, one man's trash is another man's treasure. And you see Patrick Queen ripping the ball out, you know, setting up a field goal. And what, you know, a field goal at the end of the first half, the Steelers don't get that. They might lose this game. And you look at all the stops that he had. You look at how well he talks about Russell Wilson. I mean, he went to Jay Glazer and said, hey, tell the national media I went Lone Ranger on this. There's a confidence in Mike Tomlin, and when he's booming that kind of confidence, it spreads quickly throughout the team. And you hear Russell Wilson, who just got to the Steelers, you know, we're asking him, hey, what are you guys focusing on as this game's getting close? He says, don't blink. And Mike Tomlin has been saying that don't blink phrase for a decade now. It's been something that the Steelers embrace, and he's embracing it. And I think that's what's helping the Steelers in these tough moments. They can rally around each other. They know the common goal. They know the common mission, and they're executing their playing plan. They're leaning into the work that they're putting into throughout the week. I think it speaks volumes. And yes, I think that makes them a contender. They still got to go prove it against the Chiefs on Christmas Day later this season. But right now, where they are one of the best teams in the NFL, and they want to continue proving that Thursday night.
You can stay up to date all year on the Pittsburgh Steelers by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Steelers on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Sports Today your first listen. Coming up, the Bills handed the Chiefs their first loss of the season. Before we get to that, the Chargers and the Bengals played a thriller. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets. $150 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. You could bet on Monday Night Football. The Houston Texans travel across the state to face the beleaguered Dallas Cowboys. 7-point favorites at Jerry World. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. It looked like the Los Angeles Chargers were going to stiff arm the Cincinnati Bengals on Sunday Night Football, and then Joe Burrow and that dynamic group of receivers happened.
Chargering no more. The Bolts hold off the second half barrage from the Bengals and beat them 34-27 to advance to 7-3 on the season. This is David Drugemeyer of the Locked On Chargers podcast, and the Chargers were up big in this game. They were up 24-6 going into halftime. They were dominating on both sides of the ball. Justin Herbert was slinging it all over the yard. The Chargers defense was staunch in the red zone and even dragged down Joe Burrow 3 different times. And then the second half hit, and it was a completely different story. Joe Burrow was letting it rip. He threw 3 touchdowns in the second half, came all the way back, and tied the ball game at 27. And the Chargers had one last opportunity, and Justin Herbert put on his cape. He hit Ladd McConkey for 28 and 27 yards. That set up J.K. Dobbins for the walk-off touchdown, his second of the game. And the Chargers are firmly in the playoff hunt. For more on this game and for more on the Chargers, please check out the Locked On Chargers podcast, your team every day.
The Detroit Lions with the definition of domination as they put up a 50-burger on the Jaguars.
What a win today for the Lions. They knock off the Jags. They scored. They get the ball. They scored touchdown. They get the ball again, touchdown. Again, touchdown. Again, touchdown. 5th time, touchdown. 6th possession, touchdown. 7th possession, touchdown. Lions scored on their first 8 possessions, 7 touchdowns, and then Jake Bates threw in there a 50-plus yard field goal. And they torch Sergeant Peterson, Doug Peterson and the Jags, 52-6. The 9-1 start, 8 straight wins. 9-1 starts, the best start in the franchise's history since 1934. First time in team history, according to our crack research staff, they've scored 50 points in a game twice. 3 times this year, a team has scored 38 points or more in a game. It's only been the Lions the 3 times. No other team has done it.
And the Vikings got a road win over the Titans, but it was not a good day for the officials in Nashville.
And the referees handed the victory to the Minnesota Vikings in an absolute unconscionable, I can't even say it. I'm so messed up. It is unconscionable. I'm not even going to try. I cannot believe how terrible that the referees were in this game. They absolutely cheated the Tennessee Titans. No doubt about it. 100% a true screw job by the referees in favor of the Minnesota Vikings on every single one of their touchdowns. The Tennessee Titans were cheated by the referees. It's truly unbelievable. I have never seen a football game go the way that I saw this football game go. I have never in my life seen a group of officials absolutely screw a single football team over and over and over again. It did not matter what happened. Not only did the referees give Minnesota free points, but they took away points from the Tennessee Titans on a play that you could have called on the Minnesota Vikings offensive line every single play of the game, and yet they only call it on the Tennessee Titans. Again, it's an absolute screw job. Like, if I'm Brian Callahan, I protest to the league. If I'm the Tennessee Titans organization, I am taking legal matters. This is absolutely unconscionable. I try to go to the well again, and here I am once again. I'm about as bad as the referees, where I'm so pissed off by what I just saw, I can barely speak.
The Bills handed the Chiefs their first loss of the season. Joe Marino of Locked On Bills breaks down how Buffalo circled the wagons.
The Buffalo Bills defeated the Kansas City Chiefs 30-21 and improved to 9-2 on the season, while also handing the Chiefs their first loss of the year. 23-21 Bills lead. 2:17 left in the fourth quarter. Bills have the ball. It's 4th and 2 from the Kansas City 26-yard line. The Bills are going for it. Allen takes the snap. He pump fakes to his left, resets his feet, takes off, outruns George Karlaftis. Mike Pennell doesn't have the angle. Allen clears the line to gain. Leo Chenal can't turn around fast enough. Najee Johnson falls off Allen's legs. Nick Bolton's waiting for him at the 10. He dives and falls off. Brian Cook is waiting for him at the goal line, and Josh Allen powers through. 4, and Jim Nantz said it best, the play of the year in the NFL. What a special, special moment from a special, special football player in Josh Allen. We like to talk about things I liked in our game reaction pod. That. I like that. Chills, right? Chills. You've probably watched the replay 1,000 times like I have. I'd have got this podcast out 45 minutes sooner if I wasn't sitting there watching that replay over and over and over. What a play. What a moment. Heck of a way to enter a bye week. Josh Allen. What a moment. Let's do it. Let's do the thing that we do here on this podcast in our initial conversation after the game. We'll talk about things I liked, things I didn't like. We'll recap my predictions. We'll talk about what's next. But, I mean, that's one of the signature moments, of course, for the Bills this season, but really a signature moment for a career. I know it's regular season, but come on. What an unbelievable moment. And I just love how this offense finished the game. 2 fourth-quarter touchdown drives. The last 2 times you touch the ball before you kneel the thing out. 10 plays, 83 yards, over 6 minutes off the clock, touchdown. 12 plays, 70 yards, 5:36 off the clock, touchdown. You hand the ball back to Patrick Mahomes, down 9 with 2:17 left in the game. That's how you do it. I love that decision from Sean McDermott to go for it on that 4th and 2. And not just because of the result and what we got because of that decision. I didn't care about that field goal. I did not care about that field goal. The last thing I wanted to do was watch Patrick Mahomes lead a game-winning drive at Highmark Stadium to send us in the bye. Didn't want to see it. I wanted to see the Bills do exactly what they did on that 4th and 2. And we'll talk about the 3rd and 2 play. Before that, we'll get to that and things I didn't like. But boy, was that a heck of a decision to take it into your own terms. Don't care about that field goal. Do not care about that field goal. Go get that touchdown. And that's what they did. Hat tip to the offense. First time in 30 games, a team scored 30 points on the Kansas City Chiefs. The Bills offense gets 24 first downs. That's the second most Kansas City's given up all year. The Bills go 10 of 17 on possession downs, so that's 3rd and 4th downs. They're 59% converting 3rd and 4th downs. And it didn't feel like they were in many 3rd and manageable situations. A lot of 3rd and longs they converted. Bills get 366 total yards of offense. That's the second most Kansas City's given up all year. 262 passing yards. Second most Kansas City's given up all year. 104 rushing yards. Second most Kansas City's given up all year. And the Bills possess the ball for over 34 minutes. They do this without Keon Coleman, without Dalton Kincaid, and without Spencer Brown.
Stay up to date on the Buffalo Bills all year long by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Bills on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, there was never a doubt Georgia would beat Tennessee. This has not been the dominating Georgia team we've seen over the last few years, but, they're still pretty good. You can be forgiven for thinking Tennessee would complete the win after getting out to a 10-0 lead, but Locked On Bulldogs host Daniel Monroe and Clint Shamlin said they never doubted that Georgia would win, and they put their money where their mouth is.
You mean FanDuel.com, the place that I went when Georgia was down 10-0?
What'd you do?
And placed a significant wager on Georgia money line plus 130? Is that what I did?
Well, yeah. You got juice when we were down 10-0 to
plus money just to
Josh Heupel and the Tennessee Vols, who, by the way, let's just run down some big hitters. Daniel makes money because he knows ball, because Tennessee, now stop me if you've heard this before.
Okay.
Tennessee still, against Kirby Smart, has not scored with their high-powered offense. They're all incredible wide receivers, Squirrel White, first-round draft picks, a quarterback that can throw the ball on a knee down the field 90 yards, hasn't scored more than 20 points on Kirby Smart. Not one singular.
Not one time? Clint? Are you saying not one time?
I'm saying.
Are you saying that in 2024 they scored 17 points? In 2023 they scored 10 points? In 2022 they scored 13 points? In 2021 they scored 17 points? Are you saying that that same Tennessee team that has now lost to Georgia
how many times?
8 consecutive games?
That seems like a trend.
8 games, and Josh Heupel has never scored 20 points against Georgia, but that's okay because this Tennessee defense hasn't given up 20 points to any team all season long. Not a single team, Clint.
And finally, the seat may be hotter than hot for Chicago's head coach, Matt Eberflus, especially after losing Sunday to the Packers. With the ball in plus territory as the clock wound down in the 4th quarter, Eberflus opted to let the clock go instead of getting more yards for an easier game-winning field goal or, trying to score a touchdown. Likely facing the last few games as leader of the Bears, Eberflus defended his decision, saying, "We felt good in terms of where the kick line was." If Bears fans had their way, the kick line would be right behind Matt Eberflus. If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're a new subscriber to Locked On Sports Today, we're here for you with the biggest stories in sports every day. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports Today, just how bad will the Cowboys lose in prime time? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Go to our video on demand. Click on sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.